place, American Warrior Radio, right here on the Talk to Me station, AM 1300 WMEL, sponsored as always by AVET Project. Folks, this program is all about supporting our troops and their families, both past and present. So please, get comfortable. Grab a cup of coffee, maybe a pencil or paper to jot down a note or two, because we're always efforting to bring you important information that you can use and share with others. With that said, let's get this show off the ground. My name, as you all know, is Garen Cohn. I'm an Air Force veteran, a retired legal advocate for veterans, and founder of AVET Project, but I do not fly through the airwaves alone.
Good morning. I'm Glenn McGuffey, manager of your Brevard County Veteran Services team, and I'm retired from the Air Force, so at a minimum today we're going to have two blue suiters coming at you. Fortunately, we've got some great special guests with you today to talk about some timely information and projects that the VA has going on to really help our veterans and their families, because it's all a big family. And with that, I'll let you introduce our guests, Garen.
Well, before I do that, Glenn, I want to mention to everybody that there's lots going on in the veterans community always, but AVET Project, as last year, is again this year behind a special military salute out at Space Coast Stadium with the manatees. And if you'll check out your Veteran Voice, this is the new newspaper coming out of Indian River County. It's a wonderful little newspaper that they put together. We have got a big ad there. It's really easy, folks. If you know somebody that has served honorably, okay, or maybe they're currently serving, maybe they're on active duty, and you'd like to see them honored, this is a way for the community to offer congratulations and a moment of support for these brave men and women, okay? You get 4 tickets to a ball game. You get 4 hot dogs, 4 drinks, and a beautiful plaque just for showing up. The honoree gets a beautiful plaque and mentioned over the public address system. The forms are out there on avetproject.org. Just go halfway down the page on the right margin. Click on the button that says Military Salute. And also in the Veteran Voice paper, you'll see the application. So I encourage everybody to get signed up for this so the community has an opportunity to thank those that have served and are currently serving. That's just one illusion. We'll get some others as we go through the program. But like you mentioned, Glenn, we've got some incredible guests here. And folks, this is part of our mission. We want to bring you the real news, okay? None of this grapevine stuff. We want to crush these rumors. Well, guess what? We have with us 4 actually wonderful people from our VA Medical Center in Orlando. We have the Chief of the Public Affairs, Mike Strickler. He's going to speak to us in a moment. We've got the woman that's in charge of the Veterans Crisis Line, Myra Brazel. She's going to share some interesting stuff with us here in a moment. And also Merlene Filkins, who's with the Caregiver Support Program, which will feature after the bottom of the hour break. First, though, Mike, since you're here, can you give us an update? Again, you are with the Public Affairs Office for the VA Medical Center.
That's right, Garen.
Can you give us an update as to the progress of the Lake Nona facility?
Well, I think anyone watching local news saw last Friday where the Central Florida Veterans Memorial Park groundbreaking took place.
And aren't we like one of the only hospitals that has a memorial?
We are. We're one of very few, if not the only, certainly the large hospital that does, and it's a very well put together project. A lot of community support, so we thank the community for coming together and doing that for us. And,
for sure.
We're really looking forward to seeing the construction start. It's going to bridge an area between where the Community Living Center and our domiciliary is, and there's a nice chapel right there. So testament to all veterans here in Florida for their service, and it's something that really should come out and see. So hopefully by the fall we should have it up. Look forward to a big dedication, and then not too long after that we hope to have the doors of the medical center itself open.
And everybody's waiting with bated breath for that, because of course it was supposed to already be open. We're not I don't even know where to point the finger, and it doesn't really matter. We just got to get the son of a gun open.
Yeah, we would agree. I'm a veteran myself, also another Air Force guy, so I guess that makes sense.
So we got 3, all right.
And,
4.
And 4 as well, but we're certainly looking forward to getting it open. Our timetable is still looking at 2013, perhaps 2014. Decisions are being made at that point, or for the opening this in January, but our job is to get ourselves ready to move. And that's really what we're doing. We're spending a lot of time right now getting the logistics of it together and our planning and scheduling. And in fact, I sat in 2 meetings this morning before I came out here to your radio show that dealt just with that. So hopefully sometime in the very near future. We do have some people working there now. and doing very good work from that area. Personally, I live across the street, so I can't wait for it to open because my commute's a lot less.
Yeah.
But
A
fantastic
walking
facility.
commute. That's wonderful.
You bet. I took a full tour of it again about 2 weeks ago when the drywall is coming up.
So you're
especially
seeing
upstairs.
progress.
Oh yeah, we are seeing progress, and it is a beautiful facility. So good testament to our veterans in Central Florida.
Well, thank you for sharing with that. Glenn, you got anything else on that?
No, I mean, I'll just be thrilled when it gets up. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's going to get up before I retire, so I don't guess I'll be a distinguished guest. I'll just come along as a veteran and enjoy it.
Well, I'll tell you, Glenn, every veteran in Central Florida is a distinguished guest. They
Yeah,
just
well
all
put.
out.
Well put.
Well, and we thank you so much for sharing that with us here, Mike. Glenn, as I mentioned, we have Myra with us. Now, you and I have spoken many times in the past about this national tragedy. It's an epidemic, really, with the numbers of both past and present military members that have given up hope. You know, with the current day warriors, a lot of them suffering so many multiple deployments, they come back here and they just don't have the wherewithal or the support to refine and reintegrate appropriately, and they give up and they either attempt suicide or actually go through with the act. So Myra, thank you so much for being with us and all our listeners here. And let me tell you, folks from as far away as Oregon, Indiana, Montana, Vermont, wherever you're listening to American Warrior Radio, if you come across a vet or active duty member that has some of the signs and symptoms that Myra's going to share with us, you gotta follow up with this. But before we get there, I wanted to mention, you handed me this just before we went on the air. The governor of Florida has actually declared a suicide prevention day.
That's correct.
And that's going to be April 23rd. Okay, now folks, I know you're going to be hearing this after the fact because we're actually pre-recording this program, but that's an important measure as a show of support from our governor. And I'm imagining this has happened in other states as well.
All across the country, suicide prevention coalitions are asking governors to name a day for Suicide Prevention Awareness Day.
And we've talked about this in the past where I recall a yellow ribbon ceremony that AVET Project attended up in Oregon. We were briefing the commanders and talking with the troops too about issues that are important to them. Before I went to that meeting, I said, oh, the local radio station was broadcasting this. Hey, if you're in trouble or you're at risk, call this number. Guess what? I went into the hotel room, called the number, and I was taken back by it. Because now, again, this is 2 years ago. There's been some changes, and we'll talk about that. But it wasn't veteran specific. Yeah, you did get to talk to somebody eventually after you were originally put on hold. And it just seemed odd. This was out in Bend, Oregon, at the moment that I called, that the program hadn't grown to the point it has now. So tell us about, first of all, before we get into the specifics, why is this such a big deal? What kind of numbers can you share with our audience?
Garen, thank you so much for asking. There are 18 veterans a day in the United States that take their life via suicide.
Did y'all hear that? 18 per day.
The Suicide Veterans Crisis Line has answered more than 310,000 calls since its inception and made more than 10,000 rescues. And when it was called the Suicide Hotline, there were a few things that we wanted to improve. So about a year and a half ago, we rolled out the new logo called Veterans Crisis Line, and with that, you do not get put on hold. If you press 1, if you're calling about a veteran or you are a veteran, you get routed directly to a call center in Canandaigua, New York, staffed by VA employees who have been trained specifically to deal with veterans and their issues. You are never put on hold. They do not even have the ability to place the phone on hold, and you speak with a live person once you press the number 1.
And there's a prompt to tell them to press number 1.
There absolutely is.
So it's been relabeled as the Veterans Crisis Line, which is an important distinction rather than just a suicide prevention line. All the calls go into a central location so they can potentially talk somebody down that's calling late night in California.
Absolutely.
Now, on a local level, and again, you're well versed in the entire program, but on a local level, if we've got a Florida vet here in Brevard, which got some, 72,000 vets here, Glenn?
Yeah, 72,000 plus. So I'm wondering, when I hear about the crisis line and those kinds of horrible numbers to me,
Yes, sir.
Is that, I mean, there was an inference there, but is it open on the weekends? Is it open 24/7? And share with us the number for them to call a couple of times.
I will be thrilled to do so. Thank you. The Veterans Crisis Line is 1-800-273-8255. You press 1 if you are a veteran or you are calling about a veteran. Again, that number is 1-800-273-8255. Press 1 if you are a veteran or calling about a veteran. And I will get that in a few more times if I'm allowed.
Oh, please.
I appreciate you
absolutely.
for asking. That is a 24-hour day, 7-day a week
Okay, so
crisis line.
very good. As you roll that number out, it's specific to veterans. Okay, you press 1. Now, you mentioned if you're calling about a veteran. In other words, if I'm a family member or maybe even a neighbor or a fellow churchgoer and I know that somebody's in crisis, I can call that and speak on their behalf, or how does that work?
Absolutely. Anyone is allowed to call that line. What will happen when the call is picked up by a responder there? First, they will ascertain how emergent the situation is because they have the ability to effect a rescue if someone is at imminent danger or risk of harm to themselves or others.
Well, let's go into that for a moment, Myra.
Sure.
What are some of the signs and symptoms? Even if I'm a family member, maybe I know that Jack or Jill, veteran or active duty member, I've known them all my life, but what should I look for to know if they may be at risk of committing suicide or attempting it?
Well, some of the signs and risks of some of the risk of suicide specific to veterans are frequent deployments to hostile environments.
So just basically anybody that's deployed multiple times may be at risk.
Absolutely.
Okay,
They may be at risk.
Okay, give me some definitive things I can look for. There may be personality or change in behaviors.
Changes in mood, dramatic changes in mood, and this isn't limited to going into depression. It can be they've been depressed and all of a sudden they are now extremely happy. That may be because they have, in their irrational thinking, come to the point of a decision to take their own life. And no one takes their own life without some thought beforehand.
Okay, so they're remorseful or upset about maybe reintegrating, or maybe they're an active duty member. And that could be, as we know, Glenn, a guard or reservist, because they're getting called up in record numbers. Folks, 40% of our deployed forces right now are citizen warriors. Okay, so this is huge.
Yeah, and in many cases, they've been there more times than the active duty battalions and flights and what have you. They seem to be on a more regular schedule, if you can use that word, than the Guard and Reserve. I've got a friend of mine works upstairs from me. He's been there 4 times, and he's fixing to go a 5th. And I don't really think he's in shape to go a 5th time, to tell you the truth. And I've been working with him.
So that's a perfect example right there. If you know that they're changing moods, are leading them in places that they wouldn't ordinarily go, whether you're a coworker or a friend or family member. But this is an epidemic. You got back to the numbers there for a moment. 18 a day. This is a national treasure that's turning into a tragedy. Other than what you've just mentioned, what are some of the issues that you hear? And I don't know how much you debrief the calls, because these are not something that's broadcast to the public. This is all confidential information with the crisis line. Am I right?
Yes, sir. It is confidential to the point that if someone calls to the Veterans Crisis Line, they will be asked, if they don't need an imminent rescue, they will be asked, will you accept a consult to your local suicide prevention team?
Now, this is well into the conversation, I'm guessing, because a lot of these vets, they're filled with pride to begin with. Otherwise, they may have reached out earlier, but they think they can handle it all by themselves. If they're talking to a total stranger somewhere in an alcove in New York, they're not necessarily going to be willing to say, oh, sure, I'll take a consult, because maybe they would have already done it. So I'm sure you're very technical and tactical in how you approach this stuff.
Well, I'm very fortunate in that I have a personal relationship with many of the responders by meeting them at various conferences with DOD and the VA that we're allowed to attend. And they know me. I send them cards through email. They talk to me on the telephone when they're giving me consults. And if they're in my catchment area, those responders can confidently say that someone from my team will call them back within 24 hours, business hours, and that we'll take good care of them.
Okay, so somebody, a vet or an active duty member, or maybe a family member calls about one of those. You mentioned rescues. Okay, how do you define a rescue? If somebody calls in and they're, you give them kudos for making the call. All right, they did reach
Absolutely.
out. That means a lot, I'm
What
sure,
a courage.
to the responder, the person on the other end of the phone. How does that translate into a rescue? How do they know if they've been successful?
Well, let me do a very quick scenario with you.
We love examples.
Mr. Veteran calls in on the crisis line and says, I've had all I can take. I've had all I can take. They're not doing enough for us. I've had all I can take. I gave all these years to the military, and I can't even take any more. And it's pretty obvious possibly he's inebriated because he's maladaptively self-medicating as a maladaptive, unhealthy coping skill.
Common behavior.
Very common, and it's a coping skill. It just isn't a healthy one, and we want to teach them healthier ones. So he calls, and the responder usually can pick up, maybe by the slurred language or whatever, that he may be in trouble. And in the scenario of the call, if he says he's been thinking about suicide, they are very well trained to very gently and non-confrontationally find out how they're feeling, because they're not alone. Many, many human beings, veterans or otherwise, have had thoughts and feelings of suicide.
Okay, so the person that takes the call will talk them down, so to speak. Okay, identify where they're at if they are inebriated. Just how far along? Is there some sort of a criteria that you follow?
At some point, the veteran may say, I've even had it so much that I just went ahead and took all the pills I've got here. At that point, bells and whistles go off, not literally, but in the responder's mind, and they have a process amongst themselves, just as we do at the Orlando VA and every other VA across the nation. We have a protocol set of what we do, and they can locate the veteran by pinging the phone, or hopefully by caller ID, or the veteran has offered that information. I personally have had a save of a trucker that was an 18-wheeler calling me from Georgia. He was an Orlando veteran. He was in his 18-wheeler on the Georgia highway, and he called and he said he wanted to kill himself, and he was going to ram his truck and possibly take someone out as well. So other people on my team got 911 on the phone, got hold of the Georgia Highway Patrol. This gentleman gave me information about what he was driving, and he was able to be rescued and placed in a receiving facility for a psychiatric evaluation.
Okay, so that's a successful rescue. And again, that involves all kind of issues, public safety and what have you.
Mm-hmm.
But for the fellow or gal that's sitting in their apartment or home, maybe down the basement, it's dark, they've got a gun in their hand, but they had the courage and the wherewithal to make the call, which means something. Means probably they don't want to do it, and they're trying to reach out to somebody to convince them further that they shouldn't do it.
Right.
What else can you tell us? Shoot the number out there again. I know it. Here, let me say it. Folks, you got to write this number down. 800-273-8255. Hit the number 1 once the phone picks up. 800-273-8255. How dynamic is the Orlando team? Do you go out there in public venues and share this information? How much publicity do we give this issue?
Garen, we have a national mandate that every VA suicide prevention team across the nation has to do 5 community outreaches a month as a minimum. Our team in Orlando usually does at least 15. Our team covers 6 counties, which is what the catchment of the Orlando VAMC covers. And so we are out at powwows, we are out at areas that you wouldn't even think of as being veteran specific. I've walked in barbershops and handed my cards and asked could I put posters up, because many of our older veterans they like to keep their hair in that ship shape
Sure, yeah. It's become.
mode, and so they go to their barber shops. And I'm not talking about salons. I'm talking about with the barber pole, you know.
You bet. Getting
And-
out there in the community.
And they will let them put it up there.
Wonderful.
Is there some internet address that they can contact in addition to the phone number?
Glenn, thank you for asking. There is. We have a chat line, which is, it is the Veterans Crisis Line.net with a capital V, a capital C, and a capital L. You also can now text to 838255. We want to reach our younger people that are into texting. I'd like to very quickly go back
Please.
to mentioning how we have so many of our civilian warriors that are out there. We participate in those yellow ribbon events as well. And I am not a veteran, however, my dad served 21 years Air Force and my husband 21 years Navy. So
Thank God for their service.
I've had the privilege of supporting them for almost my entire life. So I really get the military community as much as one can get, not having experienced it. And these young men and women that are not regular Army and Air Force, Navy, Marines, they come home. They come home to people that don't understand. And so this chat line is right there for them.
Okay, and we'll share that after the break here, folks. Again, we've been talking with Myra Brazel, and stick with us here on American Warrior Radio. We'll be right back after the break.